Make sure to check out my Kofi account, link down in the description. And check out my other series, Modern Classics and TV Treasures.
Can't be done, I tell you. Can't be done.
Hello, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, and it is the 150th episode! Hell yeah, baby! Woo! I never thought I'd make it to 150, let alone 100. Man, I've certainly come a long way since that Gold Diggers of 1933 review I did back in February of 2019. But it's the 150th episode. What am I going to review for this milestone? Well, let us take a look at the previous milestones. For the 50th episode, I reviewed Wings. For the 75th episode, I reviewed Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. For the 100th episode, I reviewed The Wizard of Oz. So, what am I going to do to follow up The Wizard of Oz as my 100th episode? Yeah, we're going there. But before we go there, let's talk about someone who I briefly mentioned in my Wizard of Oz review. Someone who I briefly mentioned in my Wizard of Oz review was Arthur Freed, who was an uncredited producer on The Wizard of Oz and even helped Mervyn LeRoy cast the film. He was also a producer of the Mickey Rooney Judy Garland musical Babes in Arms. He would become the head of the MGM musical department, got his own unit, and became synonymous with the golden age of MGM musicals, and even rejuvenated or launched the careers of Jane Kelly, Frank Sinatra, Lena Horne, Red Skelton, and several others. Okay, enough stalling. Let us get this 150th episode started. A silent film star falls for a chorus girl just as he and his jealous on-screen partner are trying to make the difficult transition to talking pictures in 1920s Hollywood. So, what do I think? How does this movie hold up? Well, I can say that this movie has aged like fine wine from Paris, France. The film was directed by Stanley Donen, who also directed such films as Funny Face, On the Town, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Charade, and Saturn III, so I guess he has that on his resume. The film literally started out with Arthur Freed and MGM pretty much saying, hey, let's take a bunch of our older songs from some of our older musicals, package them together into a leftover script from a previous film, Excess Baggage, and let's get tap dancing actress Ann Miller and a bunch of other stars in it. Then Arthur decided to do an original story. So he ended up getting writers Betty Comden and Adolph Green. The script went through several rewrites and revisions, more particularly to some of the musical numbers in the film, but I'll talk about that later. They were originally going to go for Howard Heel as the lead, who was also in Kiss Me Kate, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Showboat, Annie Gets a Gun, and the 80s TV show Dallas. But they ended up going with Gene Kelly, fresh off his success in American in Paris. The final script ended up being approved by Dor Sherry, who was the new head of MGM, taking the place of Louis B. Mayer. That may not sound like much, but if you know anything about Louis B. Mayer, then you would know that he was a sadistic bastard. And I feel like a lot of people who worked at MGM, including Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney's descendants, would actually agree with me on that. Like every movie, there were a lot of production problems on the set. Like Debbie Reynolds, while she was doing the Good Morning dance number, she ran into a little bit of a snag because she wasn't a dancer, she was a gymnast. She was constantly scared while doing the number. She was pretty much like, I'm never going to keep up with Jane Kelly. I'm never going to keep up with Jane Kelly. I'm never going to keep up with Jane Kelly. She was so scared she hid behind the piano and cried, only for Fred Astaire to come to her rescue. Let her tell you what Freddie Boy told her.
He reaches underneath and pulls me out, and it's Fred Astaire. He said, now, Debbie, learning to dance is the hardest thing you can do. But you have to work hard because that's the only way you can be perfect. You come and watch me rehearse for a few minutes. He never let anyone watch him rehearse. Fred Astaire rehearsed with a guard on the door. And he had a drummer and a cane and Hermes pan. And he would go through the steps and he would create the steps with the cane and the drummer only. And he was brilliant, of course. So I got to sit on the floor and I watched Mr. Astaire rehearse for about 2 hours. And he broke the cane and he threw the cane and he got so frustrated. And he'd look at me and say, this is how tough it is. This is how tough it is to learn to do things really well and to be great. If you can be, and you can be, you get back in there. And
he shot the scene from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And by the time they were finished shooting that scene, poor Debbie Reynolds' tootsies were bleeding when she took off those blue shoes. And she would later note, Singing in the Rain and Childbirth, two of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life. And if that wasn't enough, after shooting the Make-em Laugh scene, Donald O'Connor had to stay in a hospital bed for several days. Despite all those problems, MGM ripped up the merchandising machine. There was Singing in the Rain Paracels,
and a Singing in the Rain soundtrack provided by Disc Jockey, and Singing in the Rain raincoats. All of this was meant to cash in on the 1920s nostalgia boom that was happening in the 1950s. Because the 20s back then was the 80s and 90s now. When the movie finally came out, it was a huge hit, getting several Academy Awards and getting glowing reviews by my boy Bosley Crowder, who gave it a glowing review. Variety gave it a great review. Roger Ebert placed it on his great movies list, stage adaptation, and was even referenced on A Clockwork Orange.
What a glorious feeling. I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds.
Stanley Kubrick, the only dude who can make a song like Singing in the Rain, such a lighthearted song, and make it very dark. It even launched Debbie Reynolds' career into the stratosphere. Open with a Hollywood premiere where we're introduced to all of our characters, including the main one, Don Lockwood, played by Gene Kelly, as he tells the press his backstory and how he became a star. And let's talk about Don Lockwood. He is what you might call full of himself. He is very light-hearted and likable. But as the sound era comes along, he becomes a little bit insecure. But he's able to change with the growing times. Back to the flashback, we get to see Don Lockwood from his vaudeville days all the way until he's working as a musician for a movie studio, and then he gets recruited to be a stuntman. And his first job as a stuntman? Getting his block knocked off. The more stunts he does, the more he gets noticed by the studio and finally gets a contract. We cut back to present day to see the premiere of the silent film, which looks like a Douglas Fairbanks movie. Afterwards, both him and his partner, Lena, who I'm just going to say it right now, she is the most unlikable, annoying character I have seen. And if you think I'm over-exaggerating, get an earful of her voice.
Yeah, Lena, you look pretty good for a girl.
For heaven's sake, what's the big idea? Can't a girl get a word in edgewise? After all, they're my public, too.
My God. She sounds like Betty Boop if she took a barrel full of helium. Not only is she downright annoying, and I mean ear-piercingly annoying, but she is a walking nightmare. She causes trouble for everyone. She thinks Don Lockwood loves her when in reality he can't stand her. She is so unlikable and annoying that by the time she finally gets her comeuppance, it is so satisfying seeing her get publicly humiliated. Don Lockwood experiences pretty much every Beatle member's worst nightmare by being attacked by a bunch of fans, but thankfully he manages to give them the slip pull a Harold Lloyd, and land into the car of our next character, Kathy. And as previously stated, Kathy is played by Debbie Reynolds. She was Princess Leia's mom. No, not her. I'm talking about Princess Leia, aka Carrie Fisher's actual mom. Kathy is a shy, inexperienced stage actress who gets to work with her idol. And you know the saying that life imitates art? Well, apparently Debbie Reynolds really was that shy, inexperienced actress to work with her idol. What I like about Kathy is that she's not afraid to tell Don like it is. She stands up to him, and she's the first woman to ever do that to him. She becomes literal competition for Don, and that's what sparks the attraction that Don has for her. Later, we see all the people at the premiere going to witness a screening of a new invention. They all sit down and they turn on the projector, and it turns out it's a talking picture. All of them say it's a terrible idea, or they're making fun of it. And later, the industry executives are like, it will never sell. This brings real-life parallels to what was happening in the 1920s, back when sound was being conceived. The idea was either snuffed at or laughed at by either audiences or movie industry executives. It would take a little film called The Jazz Singer, starring Al Jolson, which will be a subject for a future milestone, to convince people that sound was a good idea. Hell, this movie even references The Jazz Singer. But anyways, when sound did become a big thing in Hollywood, many actors had trouble adjusting to the times. Some of these actors transitioned to sound really well, like Buster Keaton or W.C. Fields. Others not so much. One of them being Lon Chaney, who hated the idea of sound, claiming that it destroyed the visual medium of film. But perhaps the biggest example of an actor having trouble transitioning to sound would probably be Charlie Chaplin, as he made silent films even long after sound became a big thing, with films like City Lights in Modern Times. And while this film takes this true Hollywood story and does it in a more lighthearted sense, other films later on, like The Artist, would take a more dramatic direction with this true life Hollywood story. We cut back to the next day where we see Dom on the movie set and his friend Cosmo. Let's talk about him. He's played by Donald O'Connor. Cosmo is the comic relief of this film and is very loyal to Don, given how they were childhood friends. He also gets one of the first songs in the movie, Make 'Em Laugh. Let's listen to it.
Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Don't you know everyone wants to laugh? My dad said be an actor, my son, but be a comical one. They'll be standing in lines for those old honky-tonk monkey shines. Or you could study Shakespeare and be quite elite, and you could charm the critics and have nothing to eat. Just slip on a banana peel, the world's at your feet. Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Don't you know everyone wants to laugh? My grandpa said go out and tell 'em a joke, but give it plenty of hope. Make 'em roar, make 'em scream. Take a fall, but a wall split a seam. You start off by pretending you're a dancer with grace. You wiggle till they're giggling all over the place. And then you get a great big custard pie in the face. Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh.
Eat your heart out, Ray Bolcher.
The studio decides to go into sound, given what a big hit the jazz singer is, and then Lena has to open her mouth, and that leaves them with a problem. But before we get to that, we get a musical montage set to the songs I Got a Feeling You're Foolin' and The Wedding of the Painted Doll. Now, originally, the song I Got a Feeling You're Foolin' was going to be sung by, at the time, a teenage Rita Moreno, who appears in the opening. But her version of the song ended up being cut by the second draft. Now let's listen to the final product, which is...
I got a feeling you're fooling. I got a feeling you're having fun. I get to go by when you were done.
Pretty much every Buzzley Burtley musical number ever made. Turns out I wasn't too far off, because during this montage we get a scene of girls in different attire, which really does feel like something Buzzley Burtley would do. They team up both Don and Kathy, and both of them have their romantic musical number. Originally, this scene was going to be a duet number between Don and Kathy to the song Would You, with Don and Kathy dancing on a bunch of movie sets. But then that was changed to an empty backlot, and the song was changed from Would You to You Were Meant for Me. Let's listen to it.
And I was meant for you. Nature patterned you, and when she was done, you were all the sweet things rolled up in one. You're like a plaintive melody that never lets me free. But I'm content. The angels must have sent you, and they meant you just for me.
Another song which was unfortunately deleted, but thankfully you could find it on YouTube and the DVD, is the song You Are My Lucky Star.
You are my lucky star. I saw you from afar. Two lovely eyes at me, they were gleaming, beaming. I was starstruck.
They start filming the movie, but they're having trouble with the mic. The next day, they screen the film for a test audience. And it is so hilariously bad in the audio and the acting that people start laughing at a movie which is supposed to be taken seriously. So I guess every Tyler Perry drama. Studio heads and the actors, except for Kathy, all come out in shame as the people who are in the test screenings start saying it's the worst movie they had ever seen. So pretty much modern day audience's reaction to Madam Web. Feeling humiliated by the final product, both Don, Kathy, and Cosmo decide to save the movie by turning it from a drama to a musical, which leads us to our next musical number, Good Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning. Good morning to you. When the band began to play, the stars were shining bright.
Now the milkman's on his way. It's too late to say good night.
So good morning, good morning. Sunbeams will soon smile through. Good morning to you.
And now it's time for the title song, Singing in the Rain. Originally, the song was going to be sung by Kathy, Don, and Cosmo on their way home from the disastrous movie screening. But then that ended up being changed to the Good Morning song. If the script had stayed the way it was, we would have never have gotten Jane Kelly's iconic Singing in the Rain number. But enough background, let's listen to the actual song itself.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. The sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing in the rain.
Singing in the Rain is a classic for a reason. It is simply a fantastic movie with great story, great characters, great songs, and great satire on 1920s Hollywood. And for that, I give it 5 gold stars. Well, that was my 150th episode. Here's to 200. Well, until the next review, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, signing off. And by the way, make sure to tune in for Mind Boggle Month coming next week.
Until then, so long.